Okay, so welcome back to the podcast. So today I'm with my friend Kian. So me and Kian, we've been friends for about a year or so now. We haven't actually met each other too many times. We spoke a lot through mutual friends and then group chats and stuff. But I thought it'd be a good chance for me and you to sit down and talk about your journey and self-development and kind of what got you into kind of self-development and business. So for you, where did it all start? From where was the kind of starting point of your journey?
Yeah, for sure, man. I mean, I could go back real far. I won't go into too much details of like the early stages of the journey. I feel like it's very similar to a lot of people. But basically, back in when I was like 10, 11, I had Rich Dad Poor Dad lying around the house. This is like a very common book that a lot of people will read when they first like get into business and, you know, I guess not really the online space, but just, business in general, entrepreneurship. And I remember that book, I must have read about 3 times. And like 3 times consecutively kind of thing. And I realized like, man, I gotta start making some money, right? And basically that kind of like kickstarted me with the mindset from a very young age. Like when you're 10, 11, your mind can still be programmed very easily as well. And I remember back then I was like in school, I was, walking into school. I was still in like my first few months of school. I remember one of my friends was actually selling like the little Mawam strips. You get a bag from Poundland, open it up and then sell each one for like 20p. And kids in year 7, they just buy that stuff because they're like sugar on crack kind of thing. And basically that's what kind of like kick-started me off, because I decided to just copy what he was doing. Eventually, like I put him out of business. And literally from like year 7 all the way until year 10, I was just that guy in I guess we called it a quad in school, like not really a playground in secondary school, but I was just that guy that everyone would come to buy whatever they want. Okay, so whether it's chocolate, whether it's sweets, drinks, whatever, I was that guy. And it actually taught me a lot, okay, because even like on a very basic scale, like things like negotiation, things like sales, just literally talking to the random kid you never talk to just try and sell him something, like although like it sounds like such a minor experience, I feel like that's what really kickstarted me off in the game. And then coming about 2018, 2019, I remember this is when I started to grow up a little bit. I was in like year 10, touching year 11. I know one of my good friends, I'll mention his name, Ben, he was sat next to me in English, and I remember like we got talking about like business. We used to have like laughs and jokes about like different ideas, and eventually he told me about dropshipping. Okay, so dropshipping, that's something that a lot of people have come across nowadays. It's not very uncommon to know about it in the online making money kind of space. And that's kind of what like kicks me off into, just like getting into the online game, starting to learn a lot more about e-com, about marketing, and really just like all the kind of skills that you need to put together a successful business in today's times. And then from there, like I won't talk too much about my journey. Long story short, it failed quite miserably. And basically, like around 2 months later, I think, so 2020 hit. And then 2020, that's when I came across, I think everyone knows who Iman is nowadays. So if you were in the game back then in like 2019, early 2020, you would have seen the kind of ads that he was running. And basically like kind of selling everyone like his program at the time. I didn't actually join it, but I guess like I just kind of figured stuff out myself. And that led me to actually starting my own marketing agency in 2020. Okay, now it was funny because I was 16 at the time and I didn't have a clue what I was doing. And it was also like March. Okay, so March time, I'm 16 years old, and I remember like within like my first few, probably like 10 to 20 emails, I'd actually landed my first call and somehow managed to close that guy on my first deal, being 16 years old, sat in my bedroom. I guess the guy really just wanted to give me a shot. And like we got the proposal running, like was literally about to get started with service delivery. And then what came around was COVID, right? So obviously everyone knows at this point now that COVID was like one of the most unpredictable times for pretty much any business owner, even the most experienced guys in the game. And what happened is within like the space of like 2 weeks, the entire world flipped around, and basically I lost a client because I won't talk about numbers and figures. It was a real estate agent, but his numbers went very low. And he was like, look, man, I can't afford to work with you anymore. And I was like, okay, man, that's no problem. But I was still like in my mind trying to just figure out what's going on, okay, because being in the most like unpredictable times to start a business, it also taught me a lot, okay, because I'm dealing with a lot of people who are uncertain in themselves, uncertain about their future as a business, whilst trying to like sell my marketing services. And it really taught me a lot in terms of almost like roughening me up, which has really like carried forwards to where I'm at right now in today's times. So I guess, so 2020, that's when I also like came across like a lot of like mindset and like self-development stuff in the game as well. And I guess part of that was through like guys like Iman, and I was also watching a lot of Sam Ovens as well. So if you know like some of the OG Sam Ovens videos, those videos are really powerful, and that really introduced me to mindset. And I remember in 2020 I came across one guy. I'll mention his name because he's a G. His name's John Gabb, and this guy's my mindset coach. Okay, now John, I remember I hopped on a call with him when I was 17, and this guy literally changed my entire perspective and paradigm on exactly how to view myself, exactly how to view the world around me, and exactly how to also achieve my goals with the power of my mind. Okay, and since then, like honestly, like life hasn't been the same, bro. So I guess I started out by first of all just working on things like my habits, my fitness. I was boxing for quite a while, only like mostly for like fitness and just well-being, but I was doing some light sparring here and there as well. And what happened is in April time 2020, my mum and dad got me a boxing bag for my house. And I put that up in the garage, and I remember every day I'd be waking up at 6 in the morning, I'd be meditating, I'd get downstairs, I'd hit a workout, and those are the kind of like foundations and habits that have built me into where I am at today in terms of my levels of discipline, and just like the level with my mindset that I have. And man, I'm going to pause there for a second, bro. So that's kind of like what first introduced me into everything, and I guess since there, like, obviously, I could talk about like uni and all of that kind of stuff as well, because that kind of came after. But that's kind of what introduced me to like the game, basically.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think it's really interesting. Obviously, you started so young. You come across this stuff at like 11 years old, which obviously most people go through their whole life and never kind of discover this thing, or discover it a lot later. Like even myself kind of discovering it at like 19, 20, I feel like a massive advantage, really. It's like a blessing and a curse I speak about with other people. So I think obviously you discovered that at such a young age. That kind of makes sense to me a lot more now, because obviously you're 21.
Yeah,
is that right?
Yeah. Now, yeah.
So I'm 23, and for you to kind of be where you are now and what you've achieved, I think is really remarkable for your age. But obviously it makes a lot more sense now that you discovered that things at such a young age. You're naturally gonna, I feel like once you kind of discover self-development and business and all these kind of different aspects of life, then I feel like you can't really switch off from it. And obviously you just mentioned that you did go to university. So for you, what kind of happened with that? What was kind of, so obviously you've discovered this so young, but then you've decided after knowing this stuff to then go to university, and then obviously later along the line, no spoilers, but you're not at university anymore. So what was the kind of reason behind you going and obviously now deciding to leave university?
Yeah, man. So I'd say for me, so around 2020, 2021, that's when obviously like A-levels kicked in as well. And at the same time, like being so new to business, especially like in the real world in terms of like actually talking to like people that are a lot older than me, business owners that are like 40, 50, 60 years old, they're like, who's this young buck in the game? And it was difficult, I'll be honest, right? Because back then as well, I also, whilst I was aware of certain things, especially the strategies and the tactics, I was still working on reprogramming my mind. Okay, and I can get a lot more into the mindset side of stuff later. But basically what happened is I still wasn't in a position where I was seeing like significant results in order for me to justify, especially to my parents, that I want to go down the path of business and, doing my own thing. Okay, so what happened is, like when did I finish A-levels? 2021 I finished A-levels. And I remember I could go down two routes. I could go down the route of an apprenticeship, or I could go down the route of university. Okay, now I'm actually very grateful that I chose to go down the route of university, because at the time as well, you know, being just out of like COVID, all of that BS. Basically, like, it was unpredictable in like kind of the is it the labor market? I don't know if that's the right term, but it was unpredictable in the labor market to actually like be in a position where, you know, you could like get a role and like properly like excel and stuff like that. And that's what I heard from my economics teacher. So that guy kind of sold me on uni. But long story short, I also went because like my parents really wanted me to, and I think they had a bit of an influence in that as well. I could talk about that as well, and like, you know, what I believe you should do, like in terms of, you know, making decisions with your parents in mind and stuff like that. But yeah, so I went to uni, and honestly, like, I'll be real, I fell off the rails, man. I fell off the rails. So September comes around, I'm in uni, like freshers week, all of that. And I remember, man, I was just going out. Like, I was with one of... In fact, it's so funny. Everything comes full circle. I was with my friend Ben, who was the guy who told me about dropshipping and e-com, and like we're like real good friends. And it was us guys there in uni, obviously meeting a lot of other people as well. Long story short, man, the environment really does have an effect on you. Like, being in an environment where everyone's just drinking, no one really knows what they want in life, everyone's just eating rubbish food, no one's really going to the gym, no one's really taking themselves seriously, and it's just like this big, I call it a bubble, okay? It's a big bubble where you can get so trapped in your own mind, in, you know, in like the routine of just like going out because it's, you know, you're supposed to, and like going out because of fear of missing out, you know, trying to fit in, trying to build new connections, build new friends, and yeah, that's kind of what happened. So September to October, I just went off the rails, man. And then I remember what happened again, coming full circle. John Gab pops up on my YouTube feed. Okay, so I'm doing a lot of plugging for John Gab here. But this guy pops up on my YouTube feed in like October time, mid-October. I remember it very, very vividly. And I was like hungover from a night out. I just watched this guy's video, and I remembered like we also had a call back when I was like 17. So literally like earlier that summer. And I was like, man, I'd just become aware in that moment. I guess everyone kind of has this like moment of epiphany where they're like, they just become aware, and they're like, yo, I don't want to be where I am right now. So instantly what happened is he like sold me on his mentorship, and like this guy's probably like one of the most genuine guys I've ever spoken to, and he just literally took me on under his wing and just literally helped me reprogram my entire mind. And this is when I got started on my first like 90-day sprint. Okay, so I'm going to talk about these sprints a lot, because these have had a drastic impact on my life as well. And I remember within a matter of a day, instant decision, I said, right, no more going out. I told all of my friends, look, I'm doing this right now, so if I'm not out, don't question it. And they all respected the decision, which I'm grateful for as well. You know, I did actually have a decent friend group in uni. And from there, man, I was just back to it, back doing what I was when I was like 16, 17, just, you know, trying to figure out myself with the marketing agency in the online game. And I remember, man, it's hard to kind of, I don't know what the right analogy is, but it's hard to let go of, you know, like the going out, the partying, the stuff like that.
Everything you're ever used to, really.
Exactly that, man.
I think for university, going back to that, I think obviously going there 18, 19 years old, I think everyone is in that same boat. They don't know what they're doing. And I think you can come out of it like 21, 22 and you still don't know. And I actually think a lot of people kind of regress in that respect. They're kind of like even more lost. And I think like that's something I want to speak about in this video, because I know there's a lot of young guys, especially like our sort of age, who kind of feel like that way. They may have been to university, they may not have been, and the way society is, I don't think there's like exactly amazing guidance out there, and a lot of people are lacking maybe father figures or kind of male role models. And yeah, I think that's something we should probably speak about. So obviously you've come out of university, decided to leave, and yeah, it's obviously a big decision for you to make. But what would you advise for someone if they were in that situation where either they're at university now or they're in a situation where they're about to go and their parents want them to go? What would you say to that person who's in that position?
Yeah, man. So kind of going back, so obviously like I was back and forth like in uni, just going out partying, this and that. I actually made the decision to leave when it came to the end of my course. The reason why, maybe I'll say it, yeah, I just didn't do a lot of work. Long story short, kind of got kicked out. Like if my parents are watching, like sorry, but yeah, kind of low-key got kicked out. But and at the same time, like yeah, there was just a lot of stuff that I wanted to let go of, get rid of in my lifestyle. And coming back to the point of leaving uni, so there's kind of two routes that I go down with this, okay? So I could talk about first leaving uni when you're already there, and then I could talk about the second point, which is not going to uni before you've even made, you know, the physical action to go there. Okay, so I'll talk about first my personal experience of leaving uni. Now, I remember, okay, I had a Zoom call with like the leader of my course, and she just screen shared her thing, and she was like, you haven't done certain things and you can't continue. And I was like, I was low-key laughing on the call because I was like, I knew this day would always come. I knew that I was always going to leave. I just ended the call, said bye, like wished her well. And then I remember at the time I was actually working at a supermarket, Morrison's, and that was just a little part-time job because, you know, when you come back from summer, your parents are like, get a job. Yeah. And I remember, man, that day going into my job, I was sitting like behind the checkout and I was thinking the worst things ever in my mind of like what would happen when I tell my parents that I'm leaving uni. And I remember I actually waited on the decision for quite a while because we had a family holiday and stuff like that. I didn't really want to ruin the vibe. And I remember it was coming to like September time and I just said it to my mum in the car. I said, I'm leaving uni. Now, first of all, yeah, your parents kind of want two things for you. They want you to be safe, and yeah, they basically just want you to be safe and secure, right? And parents, they, you know, sometimes it can be hard for them to understand exactly what your vision is until they see certain results. And I remember when I told them this, they were mad. Like they were like, because in their minds this was like, you know, one of the only routes that, you know, I could go down. This was like the path of success that's been laid out by society, by what's been programmed into their minds, by like their like not ancestors, they're like parents.
Yeah.
And basically for a week or two they were like, well, you need to sort something out, man. Either you go back to uni or you get an apprenticeship. Okay. Now this brings me on to my second point, which is making the decision not to go to uni or to do an apprenticeship at all. So my experience of not doing an apprenticeship is kind of similar to, you know, you not going to uni, for example, if you're watching this. And my decision, okay, at the time, and one of my friends at the time told me this, he said, look, bro, do you want to please your parents or do you want to serve them? Okay, and this was a very powerful point that he said to me. It's because I could go down the route of getting a job, getting a little, you know, fancy title of a, you know, whatever role to please my parents and, you know, make them proud in the sense that they can tell their family, their friends, oh yeah, my son's in this job, he's just, or like, for example, oh, my son's just graduated from this degree, he went to this uni. And especially in like Asian communities, so me being South Asian, Indian, like there's a lot of ego, right? I will be honest, there is a lot of ego attached to things like going to uni, attached to things like what job your son has and stuff like that. And it's like, it's a bit mad. So basically they said, look, you need to start applying to apprenticeships. And I kind of went with it for a little while. And then I just turned around to them one day and I said, look, man, I'm not doing this. And basically, yeah, I just said, look, I'm not doing this. I remember my mum and dad like sat me down and they were like, well, what's your plan? My dad made me write, and the thing is at this time, like I'd already dived deep into like mindset, so I'd already had like a clear vision of exactly what I wanted in life, and that's what I put together back in October time, which was when I was still in uni. And my dad sat me down, and I'm grateful for my dad because he actually did a good thing to help them understand me. He said, I want you to put together a plan, print it out, proper old school, print it out and show me it. And that's exactly what I did. And he was like, cool, get after it. You have X amount of months to prove me. And I was like, cool, man, let me get after it. I'll be real, in my mind, I didn't have a clue what I was going to do. Okay, so basically, in terms of convincing my parents, I feel like I was in a fortunate position where I could just... I kind of developed enough trust with them in order to just say, like, look, let me give this a shot. And I also said, if anything goes wrong, then I can always go back to applying to an apprenticeship. I can always go back to uni. Okay, like, that's always a backup option on the cards. And they were like, cool. But yeah, does that kind of answer your question, by the way?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's a lot of stuff I could take from that, because obviously I can very much resonate with that. I went through a period where I left university, then obviously I have gone back and finished it. But I remember at the time I had very kind of similar ambitions. I kind of had the different mindset to everyone else, and they didn't really understand exactly where I was coming from.
Yeah.
They probably thought I was, listening to the wrong people, and obviously I was in a situation where I was so close to graduating as well. That it made a lot more sense for people on paper to look and be like, oh, come on, just finish this now.
Yeah.
But it was a lot going on in my personal life, so I decided it was best in that moment to not finish it off. But 100% know there's a lot of people out there who feel, this is not what I want to be. This is like, I've got different kind of aspirations. And I think for you, probably what kind of separates you and other people, and having like a set plan, I think is so key. And I think if you don't believe in yourself first, that you can accomplish something different in life, then your parents certainly aren't going to do that.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of the big thing where a lot of like young people go wrong, is that they don't really believe in themselves because they don't have any evidence to prove that, and you're not evidencing that in yourself, so you're not going to evidence it to other people.
Exactly.
And I think that's like a major issue. So I think it's having that, and like even going back to you saying like with your friends, I'm not doing this, like you have to respect that decision. And I think they respected that because they knew you were going to be a man of your word. Whereas I think a lot of people say, I'm done with this, I don't want this party lifestyle, I don't want to do X, Y and Z, like drink, drugs, whatever it is. But then the next week, like the smallest kind of temptation, and they're back out there.
Exactly.
And I've been in that situation before. I remember like a couple of weeks ago, I said like I didn't want to drink and stuff.
Yeah.
And then the next week out, when I went out and I did. So that kind of, it builds a reputation, one inside of you, and then further down the line with people in your life, like your family especially and your close friends, they're going to be like, okay, well this guy has said he's going to stop doing this, or he said he's going to start doing this, and it's not happened. And they're like, if they don't believe you in those times, they don't know what to believe. So I think that's kind of the big thing where a lot of people go wrong. I think obviously I mentioned that a lot of people are very like kind of stuck in their kind of like routine maybe, or very confused about what they want to do. So for you, what would you say is the best thing to do if they're in that situation? Say they are working that job that they don't want to do anymore. What would you say? Because for me, I think the best thing to do is to kind of just quit that job and then figure it out, like kind of take some time away from everything and to think about what you truly desire in your life. Because I think a lot of our thoughts and what we think we believe are put onto us from society or by someone else. So I think for me, in having kind of that time away from university and figuring a lot out about myself, that was the best thing for me to do. Although it didn't look like it on paper, I figured out a lot about myself, what I valued, where I wanted to go. So yeah, I just wanted to get your take on that. What's the first actionable step people can do in that situation?
Yeah, so I'd say a lot of people, right, first of all, they're not even aware of what to do. So in terms of just straight up actionable steps, the first thing you want to do, and this is what I do every now and then, probably like every 3 months, like every quarter, is I sit with myself and I just analyze my current reality. Okay, now when it comes to like mindset and stuff like that, I have like my personal beliefs. So I believe that your external reality is a reflection of your internal reality, meaning like your mind, your thoughts, your feelings, and also your actions as well. Okay, now if your reality isn't where you want it to be, then you've got to realize that reality is a result of your thoughts, feelings, and actions over probably like the last 30, 60 to 90 days. okay? And you'll realize, like, when you're working a job that you don't like, for example, and you're doing that for like a period of, I mean, people get into loops where they go for like a period of like two months, 3 months, and a lot longer than that as well. But that's kind of how it starts, is where like they're working a job they don't like, they'll get home and they're tired, they know deep down in their mind that they want to make a change, but then they'll go on like social media, they'll start scrolling, they'll eat junk food, they'll watch some BS on the internet, and what happens then is they get into this repetitive cycle, and then all of a sudden they'll have that epiphany moment where they're like, man, I'm not where I want to be, but they don't realize that the reason they are where they are is because of those actions over that, the past like 90 days, for example. And so there's a delay between your thoughts in your mind and the reality around you. So your subconscious mind, what your thoughts are impressed into your subconscious mind are expressed into your reality, okay? And your subconscious mind doesn't know the difference between a bad thought and a good thought. So the first thing you need to do is analyze exactly where you are. So I'd suggest writing down a day in your life, of your current day in the life, of like from like the moment you wake up to the moment you go to sleep. Write down every single detail, okay? Every thought you have, every feeling you have, and every action you take, okay? So I suggest to write it down where you first of all write out your actions, and then you also like just maybe next to it just write out the thoughts that led to those actions, okay? And then once you become aware of it, you'll understand exactly what needs to change. You'll understand exactly what habits need to be replaced in your day-to-day life. And then you can start really getting to work, okay? So first things first, you want to write down exactly what your current reality is, because then you can reverse engineer it and understand what thoughts and feelings are causing that reality, okay? Your thoughts are the cause of your reality, and your reality is the effects of your thoughts, okay? So that's the first step that I'd take. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, I think so. I think for a lot of people that they wouldn't probably go through that awareness, because obviously it takes a lot of accountability, and for a lot of people that affects the ego massively. And I think that's a big problem, especially I would say among young people, but I think even probably as people get but more older and more stubborn, a lot of people want to blame external factors as to why they are in the position they are. And I think obviously when you go through this self-development period, you kind of like discover that everything, you can go kind of full circle and be like, everything is in my control, and that everything that has manifested into my life is due to the actions, my beliefs, and all of this stuff. And I think like you can be one extreme or the other. And I think for me and probably yourself, I look at everything that's happened in my life now and be like, I was in control of that. And I think especially until I was like 19, 20, I was just so going through life so unconsciously and not taking any action, and had no plan of action to get to where I want to be. I didn't know where I wanted to be. And it wasn't until 2021 where I kind of started to, put some work in, decide that I wanted a bit more from life. I didn't know exactly where that would be, but I wanted to do a bit more, get into the gym, get into social media, like starting stuff online, trying different things. And I think, it has to start somewhere, and then you start to see the results downstream, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, and even further along the line, like you are where you are from the actions you took, like you say 3, 6, 9 months ago. So I think for most people it starts with that accountability. And I think something like meditation, obviously spoken about a lot, and for me meditation, just any time spent in solitude, is the way I look at it. So I spend a lot of time on my own. I always have been that way. I've been a lot more introverted naturally, and I think that's why I've been very reflective of myself and the world, so that hasn't been difficult for me. But I know that a lot of people struggle with that, and they like to find someone or something to kind of fill that void. And it can get to people becoming a lot older in their life, and it's a lot more harder to make those changes, because you have certain things in your life, whether they be more responsibilities, bills to pay, a set mindset that is a lot more difficult to change, because you've been kind of wired to think this way for so long. So I think for a lot of people, they can do with just taking that time, write stuff down, that what's happening in the reality, coming forward with a plan of action, whether that changes or not over time. And at least just going forward with that. So yeah, for you, I know obviously you're massive into fitness and the gym. You're a very big guy. You're working hard. So how much of a factor would you say fitness and the gym has been to your kind of overall success so far in your life, and especially your mindset?
Yeah, for sure, man. So I kind of want to pause you on that question there, because I want to go back to like the ego and how people, especially when they get older, will get so caught up in their current day-to-day, their current thoughts. A lot of people do get addicted to their thoughts and their feelings, especially the feelings. Okay, let's say that, you know, a lot of like older people, especially what I, you know, witnessed, especially in the supermarket job, was a lot of older people there were like depressed, and they were like blaming their job. And, you know, every time they do that, okay, not even chances, they're literally, you know, feeling emotions of like guilt, shame, doubt, fear. And what happens is they become addicted to that emotion, because they reward that emotion and build the habit of that emotion. Because what they do is they get to work, they start complaining, and then the reward is that they get to chat and gossip with their other work friends and feel good about that. And before they know it, they're subconsciously feeling good about complaining about their current reality, and then they just get stuck in a little loop. Not even a little loop, like that loop can last until you die, like with a lot of older people.
Yeah, I think it does for a lot of people. I feel like they don't get out of that, and like we say, it doesn't really change. And like obviously you mentioned these feelings of like shame and guilt and all of that which can only really be portrayed back on yourself. And if you're living like a life like that, you need to start with something. And I think for me, I don't even know exactly like where it started, but for me, like I've made videos before saying like I thought I was depressed, and I was someone who, if people have known me for a long time from my childhood and stuff, was probably think I was quite like a depressed kid and very like negative in my mindset and the way I spoke and everything. And I think I felt a lot of these feelings that, you know, life was unfair. But I think it can be, it can be quite refreshing to kind of just accept that everything is in your control, as hard as it can be. But if you have that mindset of like, I have the power to influence, I can live life however I want to be. But I think it takes a certain character of person to accept that to be the case.
And I'd say like, especially with people who get stuck in the loop, a lot of ego comes into play, and a lot of people struggle to separate themselves from this identity that they have. So this goes back to your point with like meditation, for example, and just sitting down with what I said and just becoming aware of your day-to-day. When you become aware of that in the moment, and when you do things like meditate, the whole point of meditation, in my opinion, is, especially, I mean, there's obviously loads of different forms of meditation, but with the form of meditation of literally sitting and, you know, just being in solitude, my perspective on that is you're basically becoming the observer. And when you become the observer, you're separating yourself from those thoughts, from those feelings, and from those actions that your identity has taken. Okay. And when you can do that, that's when you reach that stage of acceptance, because you can accept it, let go of it, and then within that present moment, you can then choose, okay, well, what do I want to be? That's when life gets really fun. You can choose exactly what direction you want to go down, and there's infinite potentials for where you want to go down, meaning you can live exactly whatever life you want. But until you detach from the ego, then you're just going to be stuck in this loop, and your ego is constantly going to be pulling you back, and before you know it, man, 3 years go by, 5 years go by, 10 years go by, and like in that old job that I was in, some people were there for like 30 years, and I was like, what? How can you live this life? But
for some people, obviously, it's a lot easier for me to say, you know, oh well, I was born into a poor family, or I have, you know, this difficulty, or whatever it is, this kind of influence in my life, or I had a really difficult childhood, my dad, my mum, I just didn't get along, whatever it is, people come across these excuses all the time, and for someone to kind of like detach completely from that, it's hard, and it takes time. But I think that time in meditation, in solitude, is where you find that. And I think, for anyone that is looking to change their life, that's kind of where you have to start anyway.
Yeah, man. There's a lot of shadow work that comes into play. There's a lot of, especially with people who've had tough experiences in the past and like have like these traumas. A lot of like people on the internet, if you look at guys like even Tate, for example, or even just like some of these like, you know, really influential guys that are influencing a lot of young people. A lot of them say that you must live in pain, you must live in depression is a good thing, kind of. That's like the mindset that they're putting onto these kids. Now, I don't really agree with that. I believe that if you can process the emotions that you've been through in the past, that's when you can truly let go of them, and that's when you can truly like lighten yourself up, like physically and mentally, in order to like go ahead and create from a much higher state of frequency, which is going to cause you to take drastically different action, and produce drastically different results. Because I can guarantee you that with a lot of guys who follow, for example, Tate's content, they won't process the emotions of depression, they won't process the emotions of lack of fear that they may have, and they're just chasing all of these material things, but they don't realize that when you're chasing these material things, even once you get them, they're not going to make you feel any different, okay? Because you can choose what you want to feel in this moment right now. If you want to feel abundance, if you want to feel joy, happiness, you can choose that right now, okay? You don't need to wait until you get a Ferrari to feel abundance, or until you get a Lamborghini to feel abundance, right? But a lot of people believe that. They think that something, once again, external needs to happen in order for them to feel some way. And when they do that, that's when they create the separation between them and that version of themselves in the future. And that's why it takes a lot of material effort for a lot of these guys, pushing themselves, forcing themselves, I must take action, I must work like 10, 12-hour days. They believe that must happen in order for them to see that reality. However, you just, what if it was different? What if things really weren't how it seems? There's a completely different mindset and paradigm you can go down in order to achieve the reality you desire, which doesn't need pain, which doesn't need to be, filled with fear and driven with like lack and anxiety and stuff like that. And then you can realize you'll start being able to enjoy life a lot more as well. You'll enjoy the journey a lot more. And I feel like there's really a big split between like, how some guys like, I do respect Tate a lot, that's the other thing, but there is a big split between like how, people on the come up are viewing themselves on the journey, which causes them to have drastically different results. So that's like a big side tangent. I can't remember what we were talking about before, but I guess we were talking about like detaching from the ego and, going into, like being in the present moment, creating real reality kind of thing.
Yeah, I think that's very good. I think kind of the next point I wanted to speak about was the journey. And I think it is a quote like, the man who enjoys the journey walks further than the man who enjoys the destination. And I think it's very true. Like for me, I look at the last few years especially, and I look back at it kind of like nostalgically in a way and be like where I once was and be like proud of myself. And I think I could go on to a different topic here again, like being proud of yourself in our society is something that's kind of frowned upon. Like for me and you, we would look at other people, especially people that we're close to, and be like really proud. Like whenever we say something in like our chat, we're like, oh yeah, that's sick, bro, like well done and all of this. But like I feel like a lot of people, especially in the UK, are very much like, they kind of like envy you a bit, and especially probably somewhere like you worked like Morrison's, and I've worked like kind of jobs like that where there's people who have a completely different mindset, who think things are very externally driven. They don't see things like that, and anyone who kind of like shows a bit of ambition is looked down upon. But anyway, like back to the journey. I think you have to enjoy the journey, and I think for me, it's been quite like kind of like a gradual kind of incline. And I think for me, I would advise anyone listening to this, especially if you're younger, that you want your journey to be quite gradual. I think it's Chris Williams speaks a lot about the slow success strategy. I'm not sure if you're aware of it.
Not really.
He basically says it's a lot better to kind of like slowly, like I say, kind of get better and better, maybe over a month, over a year, maybe like kind of like, say if you look at it from an investment point of view, you'd invest in like the S&P 500 where it's like a gradual increase every year, but it's always increasing, whereas going through maybe like crypto or stock that's a lot more volatile where it's up and down, that's how a lot of people kind of go through life. And I think a lot of people, maybe when they discover this, like self-development or something like business or whatever, they want to go like 100%, 100 miles an hour. And I think for me, like that ends up in a state of kind of burnout. And I just, like I say, I don't think you're going to enjoy the journey. And for me, because I'm more like gradual, like one day I won't really see much difference, but like if I look back over a month or 3 months, I will see a big difference. And kind of just like gradually, I've always looked at life a lot more like that, and I think I'll get to like maybe like 30 and 35 and really see that kind of compound over time. And I think I'll be feeling a lot more kind of like I can keep going a lot longer, whereas people, I think like persistence and consistency pays off in the long run a lot more than like intensity. And I think that's kind of like what's being on a journey is like. And that's just like, I think that's really good advice for young people if they're kind of discovering this content and like want a bit more from life. I think you have to be, I think if you're consistent every single day, and I think obviously the gym is a great way to look at it. Obviously we'll speak a bit more about that, but I think if you are someone who turns up to the gym every single day, 5 days, 6, 7 days a week, then even if you don't like put 100% in, you'll be a lot better than the guy who like trains 100% for like 3 days, or like he's like on and off, but he goes like 100%. I think in the long run you're going to be a lot better off.
Yeah, man. So I totally agree with that, because one thing I have written down on my vision, and this once again comes from my mindset coach, is consistency over intensity. Okay, and this kind of brings me on to like the 90-day sprints and the 100-day sprints and the 21-day sprints, and I'll talk about that. So I'll talk about first when it comes to fitness. Okay, so with me, my fitness journey was interesting. So I remember back in 2022, I actually got injured in 2022. So long story short, like I cut a tendon in my hand, and it meant that I couldn't box anymore. It meant that I couldn't lift weights with my hand, and like it just meant I was out of it for like a good 3-4 months. And what happened is with that, like my physique took a toll. Like I lost muscle mass. I also went pretty skinny. I wasn't really out of shape, but I just didn't like the way that I looked. I wasn't really like aesthetic or anything. And for me, like I'm grateful for the fact that I understood like exactly how to create my own reality and get after my goals at that point in time, so I can lay out kind of exactly what I wanted, see it in my mind, and then actually get after it a lot easier. And I guess going back to the point of consistency, it took me like, because obviously I can't just show you my physique on, on like this
you
video
can
here.
if you like.
But if you saw like the transformation I went through, and a lot of people are amazed by this, from 2022 to the end of 2023, I bulked up from 67 kg to 86 kg. Okay, I put on a lot of muscle mass. And the reason why this happened was through the power of consistency. Because a lot of guys will say that, oh yeah, I want to get in shape, I want to be looking good. And they'll go for like a week, 2 weeks, they'll track their macros, and then they're back to drinking, and then they're back to going out, and they don't truly commit to what they want. And the reason why as well is because they do burn themselves out to an extent. They do, they'll go crazy for that 2 week period, but then they'll fall off, and they'll keep doing that. They'll keep going, falling off, and it kind of reminds me of like the story, the tortoise and the hare or something. Yeah. Literally that story, man. Like, look at who won in the end, Mr. Consistent, the guy, the tortoise.
Yeah, you want to be Mr. Consistent. I think. Yeah, if you can just keep going every single day, then, like I say, there's quite a good like cricket analogy that I like to look at, and that's like, once you get to if you have a really bad day, like a really bad ball bowled at you, you kind of just like hit it just to the side and just make sure it's like still in play. But if like a really good ball is bowled towards you, then you just hit it like out of the park. And you should look at your days like this, like when the circumstances are not in your favour, then you should just try and get by, do the things that you need to do, and then move on to the next day. And then next day will probably be better, because most things don't last as long as you think, and most good things aren't as good as they are, most bad things aren't as bad, and it's the same with your days. And if you can kind of just go through life with that kind of attitude, then I think it will take you a long way, especially when it comes to your progress on your self-development journey.
100%, man. I like that cricket analogy. It's like almost like with baseball as well, just get after the singles, the doubles. With cricket it's runs obviously, but like if you just do the non-negotiables every day, you're going to win, no matter what the circumstances are. Because you could either, and this is another great quote, are you interested or are you committed? Okay, because if you're truly committed, even when the most like inconvenient thing happens, maybe you have a family event, maybe it's someone's birthday and you've got to go somewhere, can you still get your actions done in the thick of that moment? Let's say something goes wrong with business. Let's say maybe you get fired from your job, something extreme. Can you still hold that high frequency and high vibration and still act as your higher self in that moment? Okay, can you still do the actions? All right, or are you going to fall off? Are you going to go out drinking and be depressed? That's the choice you have in those moments, and that's what really develops consistency, is when things get truly inconvenient, can you still hit the actions? Can you still maintain the thoughts and feelings of that higher self that you have written down on your vision, of that version of you who already has everything you want, that you're getting after? Can you truly hold that frequency in those moments where things are not going to plan? That's the real big thing.
I think that's the importance of having a vision, is that those days. So we're back again now. We had a slight issue there with the camera, but we're just going to finish off again now. We're talking about vision and goals. So I know for you, you've spoken about vision boards in this podcast, and I know how big it is in helping you achieve your goals. So for you, what would you say is the biggest thing? Where do you kind of start with vision? If the person who has never heard about kind of vision, they've kind of heard about it, but they don't know much about it, where exactly do you start, and how does someone figure out their own vision?
So yeah, vision for me is ultimately like the foundation to absolutely everything that we've kind of spoken about today in this video and this podcast. So I'd say there's kind of like a few different ways you can view vision. One of the main ways that I view it is, let's say like from the perspective of if you don't have a vision. If you don't have a vision, it's kind of like walking outside, getting into your car, turning the car on, and then just driving, okay, going in any random direction. Let's say like you're trying to get to like London from where we are, which is like in the Midlands, right? Without a map, without no signs, okay, that's like what not having a vision is like. You're gonna end up in the most random place, you're gonna end up going in loops, and all of a sudden what will happen is, as you go through life, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months will go by. That 12 months will turn into 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 20 years, and before you know it, one day you'll wake up and you'll be like, oh shit, how did
time gone? Yeah,
how did I get here? Where did this time go? Right? And the reason why is because you didn't have any clear intention and any clear vision of where you want to go. So the vision for me is kind of like the destination on like Google Maps, for example. Okay, if you can paint a very, very clear picture of the destination on Google Maps, you're going to get there. You're going to know all the directions to get there. Likewise with vision, if you can paint a very clear picture of what reality you want to live, then you're going to be so much more likely to get there than if you didn't have that plan. Okay, now of course with that comes like the thoughts, feelings and actions that you must take in alignment with that version of you on that vision in order to actually get there. However, vision is like the main starting point of like what you need, and it should be like your North Star. So I structure my vision in a few different ways, and I like to do a 12-month vision and then a 3-month vision. This, by the way, is something that I learned from my mindset coaches once again, so shout out guys like John Gab and all of that. But so yeah, with 12-month vision, this is where I kind of go into like the macro perspective. This is where I look at exactly what I want to live in my life within the next 12 months. And I like to break it down into different areas of my life. So you have like business and money, you have like health and fitness, love and relationships, you might have studying and learning, and then also life. I call my last section lifestyle and freedom. Okay, in each section I just write down exactly what I want, as if I've just woken up on like December 31st and I have everything. Okay, and I'll just bullet point everything out, external, like what I want in my reality. And then what I'll do after that is then I'll get very clear on exactly the thoughts and the feelings that I'd be taking as that version of me. So as I said earlier on in this video, like what's impressed into your subconscious mind gets expressed into your reality, and your thoughts are the cause of your reality, and your reality is the effect of your thoughts. Okay, so just like when you become aware of what's created your current reality, you know, what I was mentioning earlier, where like, you know, you're living the life that you don't want to live. Just like that, you can apply the same to the life that you want to live, okay? And you basically detail out what the reality would look like, and then you can reverse engineer the effects and figure out what would cause that reality to happen, which is certain thoughts, certain feelings, and certain actions. So what I do is I bullet point out everything in each section of my life externally that I want in my reality, and then I'll figure out the thoughts and feelings, okay? So if I was that version of me who's already making, let's say, 6 figures a month in profit, right? Well, what thoughts would I be feeling? What feelings would I be feeling? What thoughts would I be having and what feelings would I be feeling, right? Chances are I wouldn't be feeling fear, I wouldn't be feeling doubt, I wouldn't be feeling lack. I'd be feeling abundance, joy, happiness, freedom, love for life, you know, all of that kind of stuff. And what will happen, okay, is as you, in your day-to-day, this is where like things like meditation comes into play. As you tune into those frequencies, as you start feeling those emotions and start embodying that version of you on the vision that has everything you want, then you're going to actually be able to start living and operating from that paradigm and taking drastically different action in your day-to-day, which is therefore going to push you, or not even push you, literally pull you towards that vision. Okay, so that's kind of how I structure things on a very simple basis. I define exactly what I want externally in my reality, and then I define exactly who I must be internally within my mind to go ahead and actually create that. Okay, and then the final thing from all of this is what you said earlier, consistency, right? Consistency over intensity. You must consistently act in alignment with that version of you on the vision. Okay, now, like I said, your thoughts, what's impressed into the subconscious mind gets expressed into your reality. Now, of course, things don't materialize instantly. You know, if all of our thoughts materialize instantly, the world would be chaos. Okay, like, you know, you'd walk down the street, you'd see like old women getting pushed over, you'd see cars getting crashed, cars getting broken into, you'd see all sorts of like chaos happening if our thoughts materialize instantly. Okay, but the thing that materializes our thoughts is consistent alignment with a certain frequency, aka with just being the identity that we have written down on that vision. When you consistently be that person, you'll start reprogramming your mind, you'll start eventually building the habit of being that guy with repeated daily actions, repeated daily thoughts, repeated daily feelings of that version of you. And eventually what will happen is something called the hockey stick effects. Now, this once again is something I learned from my mindset coaches, and basically, it's the fact that consistency compounds, okay? When consistency compounds, you'll go for a period of 90 days, 100 days, maybe even a year, and nothing will happen for a very long time. Maybe you see very minimal progress with your business, maybe you see very minimal progress with your physique, and all of a sudden what will happen is there'll come a day, where things just shoot off in a massive spike. And you'll see this in companies like Tesla, you'll see it in companies like Amazon, in people's net worths, where nothing has happened for so many years, then all of a sudden that consistency compounds, and then they suddenly see certain things materialize into their reality. They experience certain synchronicities, certain people come into their life, certain opportunities come into their life, and all of a sudden, boom, right? They're living the reality that they had written down. And that's the power of consistency, acting in alignment with that version of you on the vision. And that, in a nutshell, is how to create your own reality. That's literally it. But that's the power of vision, and that's literally the fundamental and foundation of exactly what I follow every single day.
I think for a lot of people, their main problem is that they think, say, and do 3 different things. And I think that's a major problem that a lot of people, especially younger people that I've been friends with and kind of decided to take a step back from, if they'd like say a lot of things that they wanted to do these things, they'd be very aligned with the kind of things that I'd say like I wanted to do. But the difference is with myself, without like stroking my own ego, is I would go and do those things, and the things I'd think about, I'd go do them. But a lot of people would think and they'd say something and then they'd do the opposite thing. They'd think and say, oh, you know, I want to do this business, I want to make some money, I want to get into the gym, I want to go speak to those girls, but they don't do it. And I think that's the problem. It causes a lot of cognitive dissonance, and it's very bad for your kind of self-esteem, I think. That's what makes you, like, that's a massive, different subject, obviously, but to do with your confidence. I think that it just gives you so much confidence that I'm that fucking guy who does the things that I say. Like I say I'm going to do it, and then I do it. I've got evidence to prove this. Again, gym is a great example. You take off your top, no one can deny it. It's a physical manifestation of that. And the same with your business, same with your money, same with your relationship, anything in life. If you've got evidence to prove that, it's going to make you the most confident man or woman alive. And I think for a lot of people, they don't have that, and that's what makes them, they kind of lose that self-esteem.
But I'll tell you one thing, man. Can you feel that confidence first before you even have it in your reality? Because you can either, I think there's like two ways you can go down it. You can either do, have, and then be that person, or you can be that person already in your mind, do the actions in alignment with that, and then have that version of that reality. And I mean, your point was like, what, confidence, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of people, when it comes to like, you know, what you said as well with like lacking alignment between thoughts, feelings, and actions, I mean, like at that point, they just must become aware again of what they're doing, and they'll realize that they're just building the habit of being Mr. Inconsistent, right? And it's so simple. All you need to do is just act in alignment. Now, of course, there's habits which come into play, which is what throws people out of alignment with, you know, maybe their thoughts and their feelings are maybe completely out of whack because they're still in the habit of fear, or they're still in the habit of doubt, or like anxiety. And I think with that, really, it's just a case of, I guess, consistency again. If you can consistently meditate every morning and consistently become the observer, like we said earlier on, if you can consistently become aware of who you're being, then all that's going to happen is you're going to become more aware. And eventually you'll just become entirely self-aware, where throughout the day, any thought that pops up out of alignment, you're instantly going to recognize it. And in that moment, that's when you can instantly choose, which thought do I want to feel right now? Okay, which thought's going to serve me, which thought's not going to serve me. Let's say, for example, I mean, I'm trying to think of a scenario. Let's say maybe you get shouted at by your mum or your dad, right? And let's say they're complaining because, you know, you're still on the come up with your business. And let's say that, you know, they're telling you to get a job and do this and that. Well, in that moment, how do you want to react? You know, do you want to have the thoughts of the old version of you, which would, you know, argue back with them maybe, which would, you know, react to what they're saying and react to the reality around them, which once again is just the effects of you? Or do you want to choose to actually not react and choose to embody the highest version of you and operate how they would if they were shouted at, for example? That's just a random analogy. And I feel like in those moments, when you become aware constantly in those moments, that's when you start reaffirming being the higher identity or the version of you on your vision, and that's when you start reprogramming your mind. It's just a case of consistency, and the reason why most people will constantly fall out of whack is because they just can't be consistent.
I think if you can be consistent, or even a better way of looking at it is persistent, with those times that we kind of spoke about when it's the hardest, that is what separates the kind of the top, the elite, the 1%, if you like, to the mediocre people. And that's just how it is, because there's just not many people. Like, we've seen this, especially you walk out in your local area and no one's even doing it on an inconsistent basis, let alone consistently. And if you're doing that on the days where it's the hardest, that is where in the future you are going to become the person you've always wanted, and everyone else is going to get left behind. But I think for a lot of people, they struggle with knowing what they want in that vision in the first place. I think they probably look at their environment, their influencers, and be like, okay, well, this guy's doing this and this guy wants a certain lifestyle, so I must want this. Comparison. And I think, that's how has killed a lot of people. We have social media, which is the worst thing for comparison. And I think that's a big issue, because I've heard a lot of people say this, and it's clearly, if they wanted it so bad, and I think if anyone wants something so bad, you would go and do it. But it's quite evident that they don't. I think a great example, again, going back to the gym, everyone would be like, it would be nice to have a six-pack. They want to have the six-pack, but they don't want it enough to go and do it. There's only a few people out there. There's like 1% probably of people that have a six-pack, probably less than that. Again, like, if you really wanted it, you would go out and achieve it. And I think, that's a big problem, is being like, going back to that, meditating on it and thinking like, what is really important to me in my life? And I think, that's the thing that a lot of young people need to kind of grasp, in taking the next step before that is being very clear on what matters to them.
Exactly that, man. I think, that's a really valid point, especially with social media. It's actually something that I've recently decided to just cut out as much as I can. The biggest thing for me, I'll be honest, was Instagram. And I realized, comparison is what the thief of joy, that quote.
Yeah,
and when you really think about it, maybe if you're in a place like Monaco or like Dubai, then you're going to see a lot of material wealth. But even then, are these guys really happy when they're sitting in that car? Maybe not. Some of these guys have maybe they have the material wealth, but in the background, their family situation's entirely messed up. When you see all of these things on social media, it really is just a tiny little snippet of what people want to portray about themselves. Okay. And I realized, just cutting that out has been the biggest, not only time saver for me, but also just in terms of mental clarity. It's why do I need to compare myself to other people? The only person you need to compare yourself to is who you were yesterday, who you were a year ago. Okay, because if you're not improving, then that's the real issue.
Yeah.
And I think, what was I going to say?
It's like going back to that vision thing. I think if you're comparing yourself too much to other people, it's like you're driving a car and you're constantly checking over the shoulder. You're going to crash eventually because you're not focused on your own vision. I think it can be somewhat beneficial to maybe look, say me and you, similar kind of goals and similar mindset, to check over that person, be oh, what's he doing, and looking at it from an inspirational point of view. That's good, but there's a fine line between looking at it for inspiration and getting caught up in it and be oh, fucking hell, this guy is younger than me. I could look at you and be you're younger than me, and you've done this and this, and I haven't. But you have to having perspective of where you are and where you've come from, where you are now, is the most important thing, because you say, you comparing yourself to others, it's going to ruin your life. And what does that matter anyway? You've had a different life compared to that person. You want different things. Everything's so different. So when you break it down like that, you realise how pointless it is, and obviously how much of a mental kind of headache it's just giving yourself.
Yeah, man. And another big thing with this as well, right? You said it's a very fine line. Okay, let's say you're looking at a guy with a Lambo. Let's say you're looking at a guy with a Rolex on Instagram. Maybe they're even younger than you, right? Now, in that moment, okay, what feeling are you feeling when you look at that? Is it jealousy? Is it anxiety within yourself that, I need to work harder, I need to get after this? Become truly aware of what you're feeling in that moment. You'll find that when you see a reflection, back to you from reality, let's say you see that guy with a Lambo, how do you react once again? Okay, are you happy for that guy's success, or are you jealous? And then if you're jealous, that's just your internal belief, because what's the quote, all judgment is self-judgment, something like that. And it's once again, that's when you start creating separation between you and the version that would already have those things. Because I'll tell you right now, the version of you who has a Lamborghini, would they be checking out guys on Instagram and seeing what Lamborghini they have? Of course they wouldn't. No, really, no, because you could just go outside and drive your car, right? Even this example right now, a lot of people maybe want to get into the content game, okay? And this is something that I'm still very new to. A lot of people will be wanting to get into the content game. They'll watch countless YouTube videos of how to record content, how to shoot this, how to make short form reels, all of that type of stuff. But once again, they're creating the separation. They're not acting in alignment with that person. Us right now, we're acting in alignment with the versions of us 5 years down the line. Even if we don't have, the best equipment, we're still acting in alignment with that person. And I can guarantee you, we're just going to be that version of us. It's going to materialize in our reality because we're consistently being that. But, there's a very fine line, like you said, and if you, fall on the other side of that fine line, you can do a massive disservice to yourself. You create a lot of separation between you and the version of you who'd have that goal, and you can almost find yourself making the gap even further between you and that desired reality.
Yeah, 100%. I think that is why, especially young people, there is so much problems with mental health, especially self-esteem that I looked at. I was someone when I was a lot younger where I very much lacked self-esteem. But now, a lot of people will say to me, you're really confident, your self-esteem's quite high. I mean, for me, inside of me, I don't know if I feel that exactly, but I think it has somewhat changed a lot and manifested into my life. But I think that's because I think a lot more about who I am and what I've achieved, and I don't look at other people and really like envy them and be like, oh, look what he's done. Obviously we all get caught up sometimes, but yeah, I think you have to, but that starts again, like I speak a lot about like having evidence to prove that in yourself. And like you say, you can be that guy who like thinks it first and then it manifests, or for me it works better to be the person who has the evidence and then sees that, and like I find that a lot more aligns with me, because for me I'd feel like a bit disillusional when I'm like, like I am this guy when I'm not really, because I think that's hard, because I think you have to have evidence of that. Like if you are someone, if you're trying to like portray this type of person, maybe like really like a masculine, like confident man who's like really successful and works hard, but you're just at home, like you're staying in bed late, you're just drinking, doing drugs, like playing video games, like masturbating, doing all this stuff, like how are you ever going to see yourself in that light? I think it's pretty hard for most people anyway.
Yeah, man. I'd say with that, once again, it comes down to like that disconnection once again. I'd say another thing as well is authenticity. Like, do you really want to be that guy that you're portraying on Instagram, or do you just, want to do you and just, whatever it is that's authentic to you? Like, how authentic are you being? And I guess it really just comes down to that fundamentals, the vision. Like, just, if you can be that guy. And another few examples I can think of, right, of people who have seen it in their mind before it's been in their reality. If you know Eddie Hall, his deadlift, if you look at how he prepared for that lift, he actually went down the route of a lot of visualization, meditation, to actually see it in his mind first, truly believe it in his subconscious mind, and then he actually did it in his reality. Likewise with football players, with basketball players, these guys will see all of this in their reality before it's even happened. Even like DJs, when I know some DJs on the come up, they'll be in their room, right? But they'll close their eyes and they'll see thousands of faces in front of them, and they're on a stage. It's that type of thing. And I believe, like, obviously there can come like a certain feeling of like delusion, but I do believe you have to be deluded to an extent. Otherwise, nothing changes if you don't change in your mind.
100%.
That's the biggest thing.
It's just finding that, and I think you have to kind of like start somewhere. And if like it's just starting somewhere, just building those habits, going back to that, I think that's going to be kind of a catalyst to you believing in yourself. Because like I say, I think it is very hard for the average person, if they are doing like a lot of bad habits and they're very disaligned to that person that they say they are or they want to become, it's going to be very hard for them to kind of find that. But I think that this is quite a good way to kind of end that, and hopefully end this podcast. I think it's been hopefully really helpful and engaging and hopefully educational, and helps a lot of young people, especially younger men out there with maybe just struggling to kind of find purpose and find true value in the world we're living in, society today. So hopefully that can be helpful. Have you got any links you'd like to plug in the description, Kian?
I'll drop my YouTube channel. I'm actually documenting a 100-day sprint on there, so you can find out some more about that. And then maybe my Instagram, I'll drop that below as well. If you guys want to contact me, just drop me a message. And man, I'm happy to share my thoughts and on anything you guys have.
Alright, that's been good. It's been a pleasure having you, Kian. And if anyone could like and subscribe, that would mean a lot. And we'll see you in the next one. Take care.